Like Steve was saying, we're going to be taking a look at some different auctions here that have occurred here in California. And again, it's always interesting to look at sales that have just taken place. We can see what people have paid. We can get an idea for some of the deals that were there. In fact, we love finding good deals, in results there that we can kind of use as examples. Or sometimes we find results that show us bad deals as well. We find it in the same way. But yeah, we're gonna be reviewing some properties here in California. So to talk about just how California works here before we do that, California is a tax deed state, meaning that the county basically waits out a redemption period that's set in state law. Everything to do with how the county handles things is set in state law, but in California, they set a 5-year redemption period on properties. After 5 years of delinquency, though, the county can foreclose on them and then offer them up at auction, to pay off the delinquent taxes. And so that's what we see every year. Every year the counties there in California hold annual auctions where they sell off the properties that have just been foreclosed on. So they sell those off to the highest bidder, and beyond that, though, it's pretty straightforward tax deed state.
Yeah. Now, when we're talking about who handles the tax sale, it's going to be the tax collector or the treasurer within the county government. So that's what we're going to be looking for. Sometimes they refer to these property as tax defaulted property. So sometimes using that keyword might be able to help you find an upcoming auction or information. Now, they're going to use a premium bid method like any type of auction. Like Shade said, they're pretty basic. That's going to start at the delinquent taxes, penalties, and fees, and then bid up into price. Now, the deed will go ahead and be issued within about 30 to 60 days of the auction taking place. But one thing that is kind of unique is that California does not offer over-the-counter tax deeds. What they do is they'll go ahead and offer resales. In fact, there's been a recent law a few years ago that allowed them to start offering these properties for a lower opening bid amount. The reason is they had a bunch of these properties that essentially kind of got over water where the taxes were so much owed that nobody was buying them, and so they just sit there on the books. And so to remedy that, what a lot of these counties will do is go ahead and have a resale where we've seen them start as little as $100.
Yeah, at some point they need to find a way that they can, find a new owner that can get into the property, and that means letting go of the tax debt that is basically, has it's making the property toxic at the time, because obviously the more money that's owed, the less desirable the property looks to investors. And so being able to offer a resale and lower the price is a really good way to fix that. The other thing about California is they have a lot of online auctions. I mean, a lot of their auctions are online, even compared to most states. I would say they have a high percentage of auctions that are online using either Bid for Assets, which does a lot of them, GovEase, or Real Auction. They have a little bit of everything there within the California county. So a lot of online opportunities. There may still be some on-site opportunities too. It wouldn't surprise me, but there are a lot of online opportunities in California.
Yeah, there's a number of counties that still do on-site auctions, but many of them have moved on to using Real Auction. Bid for Assets is another big one, and GovEase too has started adding a lot of auctions. Now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and look at some sales. Now, I have quite a few to go through, so we'll get through them. We have some extras if we have time or not, but I wanted to get a feel of what's kind of happened over the last few months. Now, some of these areas are going to maybe bid a little bit higher, but in looking at the profit margins, I think that they're pretty interesting. So this first property here we see sold in Sonoma County, starting at an opening bid. I mean, it was sold for $161,000, started an opening bid of $34,000.
Yeah, it looks like so valued wise, they show 100,000 in improvements here with the land value of 70,000. We've got a full address on it, and so I think we're looking at some kind of a single family home. Is this it right here?
Yeah, this is it right here. And one thing that's kind of interesting, so it's kind of right there, and I'll show you. Here it's currently for sale. So they bought this property for 161,000. Here, 3 months ago, and now it's currently for sale. So since that time, they've received the deed to the property, and they put it up for sale. And I think all they've done is just clean the property up. Maybe they spent $5 or $10 grand, if that, just clearing everything out, because as you look into it, it still is, needs to have everything done.
Yeah, well, and they are trying to, well, they're trying to double their money is what they're trying to do. Well, they're probably not going to quite double it, but with what they bought it for and what they're trying to sell it for, they're basically trying to sell it for about double that. And yeah, like you said, they maybe swept out the property and done some stuff, but the total value on it, they must be convinced that there's enough value in the property there that somebody else will come in here and go through it, the steps to to rehab the property and get it ready for use at that price point. And it does, I mean, there are things about the property that are pretty charming. I mean, it looks like it's, it's somewhere in some hills here. I can't tell if it's in the middle of the city or not, but it looks like it's surrounded here by forest area. And it also looks like it's been somewhat gutted, like it's ready for, I mean, it's usable probably as it is, but it needs a remodel job here, which, yeah, it looks like they're kind of leaving that open. But some of the things like the windows might be updated. I can't tell. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting house.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're easily going to make 100 grand on this deal. If they go ahead and sell it for, I don't think they're into it more than 5 or 10 grand. That would be my assumption. And they're trying to make a good 100 to 120, 130 grand on it. And that's still going to be a great return on a house that's probably valued at, in this, they're trying to actually sell it pretty cheap, because as we look at some of the other properties within the area, you can see that they're selling, this is right next door, 672.
Oh
This
yeah,
is
the money's there. It's you can tell the money's there. It doubled the price.
Yeah, this is actually a really tiny, it's only 700 square feet, sold for 442,000. So, this one's quite a bit bigger than that, almost double the size. It has an extra bathroom, you could easily have more than one. You could probably add 3 beds in there if you wanted.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's a bargain at 299, and somebody could fix it up. They could even put a couple 100,000 into it, and it would still, be worth it. There would still be, they'd still have equity in the property even if they put 200,000 into it.
yeah, so at 161, I think that was a pretty good deal. This house was a little interesting. I don't know how I feel about that opening, that high bid amount.
Yeah, they
Uh,
paid quite 666. It opened up for how much here? For 42. So yeah, it bid up quite a bit. Yeah, let's see it.
yeah, well, and it could be argued that they overpaid for it, but you kind of get an idea of why they did. Here's what they value in the property at.
Oh
You
wow.
know,
So that actually makes sense. So they did pay 2/3 of value for it. But I mean, it's worth nearly $1 million, and so it's so new. It was built in 2011, and so they're making $300,000 on it. With buying it this way. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's. I mean, and it's a property. I mean, they could be buying this for their own personal use. They could be buying this as an investment property. Whatever it is, making $300,000 on the purchase alone on it is pretty awesome.
yeah, it's right here at the end of the street. They've got kind of this yard out here, this grass up here in front. So them paying 666,000 really probably it makes sense based on how new this property is and based on what the value is. So they could easily make 300 grand on this property, without too much effort. I mean, even if they put in 100 grand, they could still make 250 or more, And so even though they paid up for it, even though it was I mean, this is in Sonoma County too, we're looking at, in an area that has some pretty high property values. So it makes sense to me why they were willing to pay up for it and why, bidders were willing to pay as high as they did.
Yeah, I think it's a great deal. And I mean, if you were going to just buy a property out there, you were willing to pay $600,000 for it. They got a lot of, a lot of bang for the buck on it. They're making a lot of money on that purchase for a property like that, and it's probably not going to need $100,000 worth of work because it was built in 2011. It looks like it's currently occupied here. Yeah, it's not going to need a major investment like that. If it did, there's room for it, but it does look like it'll be a pretty good profitable deal there, a good purchase.
Interested in tax sale investing? Become a member of taxsalesupport.com to learn how.
Yeah. Here's another property, and this one, they actually paid, I think, a little too high for it. But in looking into some of the comps, it made a little bit more sense to me, but it was there within the same cell, so I decided to go ahead and show it. You know, it ended up selling for 186,000, and it's this trailer right here. And when I first looked at what Redfin had on it, I said, okay, they paid way too much. You know, it ended up selling for 186,000. You know, Redfin is valuing it at only 239,000. But then when I started looking into the comps that were right around it, it made a little bit more sense to me, even though I do think they paid a little too high for it. You know, this one here was built around the same time, 1972. You know, it's your kind of your double wide, same size, sold for 415. This
Oh
one here,
yeah. Yeah, it looks like they're everything else. I mean, at least everything else is selling for quite a bit more than that.
yeah, 415 for that one. And then this one here ended up selling for 407, this one being a little bit cheaper, but these are all pretty much the same thing. This is an over 55 community. And so picking it up for 186,000, you know, they're still getting it for probably under 50 cents on the dollar.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. Yeah, you know, just upon first look at it, you'd think, oh, you know, yeah, it looked like they paid pretty close to market on it, but the Redfin number on it there, 240, is way under.
Yeah, exactly. You know, looking at the sales, they're kind of between 400 to 450. So, you know, in that case, they're probably getting it closer to 40 cents, 45 cents on the dollar. And that may be the cheapest way you could buy, you know, that type of property in that type of community.
Now this is an interesting one. It got one bid, you know, opening bid was 140 and it sold for 140. Oh, and the value on it, goodness, somebody got, at least, I don't know what it is, but in terms of the numbers and improvements on it, 500,000. It seems crazy. I mean, yeah, it shows improvements of 500,000 and land value of 300,000.
Yeah, now when you look up the address, it just shows it right here, but it's actually up kind of, you can see that none of these homes have any numbers on them. But, you know, and kind of looking into it, here's just what, you know, they valued it on Redfin. But then when I was looking on Zillow, this is actually, that's the price that they actually paid for it.
Yeah.
Was 140,000. So that's not what the actual value is. We'll look at the value here in a little bit. But one thing that was interesting is that it had all of these photos on the property that allowed us to kind of see what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times these places are the best sources for information on the property, just because if it's ever been listed historically, you're going to have all of this data on it. And yeah, this is all great information. Wow, they actually got this for a steal.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they did. Now, there's one thing that I was going to look up and see if I could find more information about it, which was a little bit of a red flag. And you can see they added
Yeah.
information here, but it says property is in receivership. Now, I wasn't able to find an answer that I feel confident enough to say on why that would even matter in a tax sale, especially within California. It may be some within California line. Maybe they're just saying that. You know, I don't know, but that's kind of the risk that I saw there was, you know, I don't know what that means. So that's probably something we need to talk with an attorney about to make sure. But other than that, you know, we're really looking at a pretty good property, you know, with some higher level type interior, you know, that looks like, you know, marble.
Yeah,
And
it does have some nice features here to it. It's an odd house, definitely different from like most houses that you're going to see. But it does have a lot of custom work that's been done here to it. It looks like it's in a pretty cool area. You know, it's interesting because the tax bill is high enough that it's got to be unpaid taxes for a long time period, maybe more than 5 years, in order to be up to 140,000 or whatever the opening bid amount was.
yeah, it ended up selling for 140,000. You know, there was only one bidder on it, and maybe they were all scared away about this. but maybe this just puts us a longer holding time on it. Maybe it doesn't matter. I'm not sure, enough yet. I was kind of going to research it a little bit more. But even at the value, we're looking at a value of 557,000, land value of 325,000.
Yeah, it's like $1 million value practically.
Yeah, and looking at some of the properties that have sold within the area, this is one that sold really close to it on the same street, for 900,000. Here's one on the same street, for over $1 million.
Holy cow! I can't believe you got that for 140. That's crazy how much money they're gonna make on this.
Yeah, and then this is one of the cheaper ones I could find, that sold for 606.
My goodness, that is insane. Yeah, like the cheapest level you could assign to that house is going to be $700,000 or $800,000 probably.
Yeah, well, and it's got kind of a cool location. They've got some cool photos here. You've also got this house here in the back. I'm not sure what it is, but that could be used for something. And,
yeah, it's big.
And even though the house is kind of kind of different in this type of area, it probably would work. It's got kind of a beautiful design inside.
It's been really well done. It looks like.
And this is high level stuff here. You've got. Look at that. Look at the size of that stovetop.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really nice. They've got a lot of nice appliances in there. The work looks like it's nice too. A lot of features that cost more, things like the highlights. We're looking at there. All of the work just to do a round house is a lot of work for everybody involved.
Yeah, yeah. So this one could be. I mean, there is a level of risk there that we don't know about without more research. But this could really have been, a great deal. Picked up for 20 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, or less.
Yeah, so really kind of a pretty interesting property.
Wow. Yeah, that one blows me away. That's one of the better deals that I've seen in a while. And does it include land?
Yeah, I'd have to. I just clicked off. I think it was 3 acres or something like that.
Yeah, that is pretty good. This one looks kind of interesting. 42 acres.
Yeah, now this was a land property sold for 77,000, started at 19,000. You can see that it's 42 acres here. They're giving it just a value of land about 170,000. Now here's where the property is located. It's kind of 40 acres right here within this area. And well, what is the property valued at? In looking into it, these properties right here. So this property here, this property right here, property down here below. All of these properties have sold pretty recently. This one sold for 450,000.
And how many acres is it?
These are all 40 acres as well.
Oh, really? So they're all the exact same size, or pretty close?
This one's 38. The one that sold at tax sale is 42.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Yeah. This one here sold for 500,000, and it's 42 acres.
Oh wow, this is another great buy. Holy cow!
Yeah, and this is the property just to the south of it, and this was the cheapest property that sold for 320, and it's kind of up here in this area, which isn't as flat and good an area as this area.
Yeah, far less accessible.
This one you've got roads up to the property, and they're obviously we're doing some type of doing some type of farming there, I should say.
Yeah, it does look like farming they've got to be doing there on, but the ground has all been cleared.
Yeah, and you can see kind of what people are doing here. So, you're looking at a piece of land that sold for 70,000. It's probably valued between 400,000 to $500,000. These ones is kind of that there and that right there. So
how many bids did it get? Can we see that? All right, so there were some bids that started out. So I guess it bid up from 20,000 up to 77, but that's still so cheap for a property that is valued, so highly.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about picking up good pieces of land, this is a good piece of land to pick up. if you're worried about, things like rehabbing a property or anything like this is just straight land, and it's not land that's just sitting. People value this land. Here's, 3 properties here that sold right here that are bordering this property. These 3 properties bordered this property that sold for 450, 500, and then the cheap one out of the way sold for 320.
Yeah, that's as good as you're going to find with tax sale numbers and opportunities. I mean, we've seen a number of deals here where people are making more than just like double their money, sometimes triple their money, sometimes quadruple their money, or even more, I think, in some of these cases.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember kind of what this property was. We can see that it only got 1 bid as well.
So for 57,000.
Oh, now I remember what this is. This one was here, so only sold for 57,000, and I don't know if it's a good deal. I don't know how much is going to be involved with it, but it's this property right here.
In downtown Stockton.
Yeah, and as you look around here, you can see how most of it is kind of been refurbished.
Yeah,
You've
it is
got
kind of one of the last buildings on the block that have not been updated.
Yeah, so everything else is kind of updated. So the question would be, and in fact, this lot right here ended up selling for quite a bit. I think it sold for almost 200,000 just for this lot right here.
Interesting.
But I don't know what would be involved with this. But in kind of looking at some of the properties in the area, there's a lot of these type that have been refurbished, where the downstairs is some type of commercial type property, and then they put apartments up here within the top of the building. In fact, if we take a look at it, you can actually kind of see the back side of it as well. So it's this building right here.
You know what? It looks like it had a fire, and the front face of it still looks pretty good. I mean, it could just be that the ceiling is just done whatever, but it really looks like a fire from up top. And if that's the case, then it would mean that a lot of the bones with the structure are still going to be okay. But it would be obviously a lot of money, but it would be really valuable too once you had it completed. I mean, compared to what it was purchased for, it would be highly valuable. Even I'll bet they can turn around and sell this if they wanted, just as is without doing anything, and somebody will come in here. We'll probably see it listed here before long, but yeah, you could see that this would be a highly valued property if somebody actually did a rehab on it.
I kind of I was wondering if that was a fire as well, and I tried to do a search on it to see if anything could pull up on it, and I couldn't see anything. That doesn't mean that there wasn't one. There very well could have been. You can see a little bit of smoke right there. I don't know if that's smoke or if that's just stain. But here's the back side of the building, and really it is, it's got kind of a cool look to it, that if somebody could restore that, and it's not like they paid a huge amount of money for it. They paid 47,000. This isn't the kind of deal that I would know how to do, but there's people out there, investors out there, that do know how to do this, that are probably within the California area. And if they could have picked up this property and redid it, they could have, really probably made it into a great investment. And one thing that's kind of interesting is, I thought that this property first was at the tax sale, but that's kind of an interesting property as well. But we have these 3 structures right here that are kind of the eyesore of the whole town, and really are probably pretty good examples of ones that could be revitalized and still be profitable without tearing it down.
Yeah, it's an interesting property. And I mean, location wise, you can't get a better location than that. That's what those properties are all about, is the location. Fixing up a property like that would be highly valued, and it's going to be in the most desirable place because it is right in the middle of downtown for both, commercial opportunities there would be great, and residential opportunities there would be great.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is a good deal or not, but it was kind of interesting to see, one of these properties in downtown Stockton like that for the right type of investor, you can't buy that for less than $47,000 isn't very much money.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's just to be able to control it, a deal like that, it's really not very much at all. I mean, that could be a
It-
multi-million-dollar property.
Yeah, this is the little house that opened up at 30,000, ended up selling for 165,000. It's located in Oakland there. And here's the house, just a tiny little thing. Does need some work, but valued at about 391,000. So, you know, there could be good profit within there, you know, picked it up for about 35 cents on the dollar. Not too bad of a deal.
It's a simple enough house too that you know, it's probably not going to take too much to fix up. So where they bought it at is really a pretty good percentage of value. They could probably turn around and sell it as is, you know, and make money on it, or rehab it, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, here's another property that's located within Oakland. You know, started at 45,000 and so, you know, ended up selling for 252. You know, we don't have a lot of information. We could go look at the GIS and in the county record information, but just pulling it up quickly, we actually don't have quite a street view for it. You know, it's kind of this property right here. But here's what the property, you know, is currently available. Not currently available, but here's the house. So they ended up selling for, you know, 252, and it sold for 520 back in October of 22nd. Right now they're valuing it about 471, and looking at the comps in here, most of them are kind of valued around 500,000. So I think that recent sale of it selling for 252 has kind of bumped this down lower than when it used to be. But what is kind of nice is that, you know, we can get an idea of what it looked like back in 2022.
You know, it's an awesome purchase at 250. I mean, yeah, from what we can see there, what it looks like it was built in what, in 88 or something like that. You know, it's a newer, yeah, in 88. Yeah, it's a newer townhouse. You know, we can see that it was in pretty good shape just 2 years ago, or three, you know, I guess 4 years ago now. But yeah, the value on it, they basically have the ability to double their money on it, you know, because I'm sure the value will bump back up there, you know, above the $500,000 mark. Yeah, just knowing that it sold though for 520 back 4 years ago, you know, yeah, the value on it can only go up from here. They'll probably be able to double their money with this, and it's highly usable just like it is right now. It probably has you know, pretty good rent income as well. If they wanted to just hang on to it, it wouldn't be a bad property to do that with.
No, you know, and you can see why they were willing to pay. Easy property, easy to get into. We'll go over some of these kind of quick because we've taken up some time. Here's one that sold for 30,000, and we can see it's 10 acres. And it's actually this property right here. It includes this little pond here. They've obviously got some type of farming going on there. You've got some trailers and things. So it's kind of this 10 acres right around here. Here is pulling it up on Redfin. You know, they're valuing it at 100,000. You know, I guess they ended up paying 30 for it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good buy.
Yeah, here's a property right there within the area that sold for 95. Here's one that's right next to it that sold for 174. And then here's one that's within the area for, you know, 174 that's currently for sale. So
Oh, yeah, that's like as good as you get for land purchases of that amount. I mean, they didn't spend that much and they really got a lot of property out of it.
yeah, I mean, so for 100,000 plus, I think that pond has some value. You know, looks like overall a pretty good deal. You know, this is the type of land you pick up for 30 grand. Let's say you even sell it for 100 grand or 110 grand and sell it pretty quickly. You know, you're still making 60, 70 grand on a deal like that.
Yeah, it was an excellent purchase.
We'll look at this last one, and you know, I don't know how good a deal it was. I was trying to find some comps. There was some comps within the area that I could find, but I just thought this was a really cool property. So
yeah, so it opened for 12,000, sold for 72. It says it's how many acres here? It's
it is
15 acres.
15 acres. but we're going to kind of have to look at it with the GIS map. So here you can kind of see where it's at. In fact, I'll go ahead and click off this. You can kind of see that it comes along here and the road goes up on either side of it. So you've got property there to the right of the property and property to the left of the property. And then it looks like there's something back here within this area.
Is that a waterfall?
Yeah, this is what makes it so cool. So I think you could build on it, you know, anywhere within this area right here, you know, over on this side as well.
Is it just rapids maybe? Or maybe there's a waterfall there. It looks like there's
Oh no, it's awesome.
Oh yeah. Holy
This
cow.
is from the property.
Wow. Those are bigger hills than I realized. Wow, that's
Well, I think this is up a little higher because if we go back, you know, I can go.
it would be awesome to own. I mean, look at that. That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome looking. Look at that. Somebody's got a fish trap there.
Yeah, you know, but if we go back to where it's located at and you kind of get an idea of what it looks like from down below, it's not as steep right here. So I think as you come up into here, some of those photos were taken in here and maybe some were taken down kind of here in this area.
Yeah,
But
it looks like there's a lot of I mean, it has a lot of river in this lot.
so here's kind of the first part of it all along here.
Now, that's probably a for sale sign for it right there.
Yeah, there's the for sale sign for it. You know, back when this was taken in September of 2025. But you've got all this land right here, you know, all this land over here, and you can see that it starts to kind of get hill, you know, there's kind of the hill starts here and it kind of goes down here. So there is going to be some elevation changes, but in looking at some of the homes that were for sale up in this area, there's some that are on, you know, on the edge of the cliffs. So this actually has quite a bit of, you know, flatter type property right around here, and you might even be able to build right there pretty close to where you know the creek is located, because you'll have area you could build right here or area you could build right here.
What do you think? What do you think it's valued at? Any idea?
It was tough for me to really figure it out because there's nothing quite like it that I could find that is sold recently. I found some on different areas, maybe like in a stream over here or up here further, that were selling between 200,000 to 300,000.
Wow.
But I'm not 100% sure on what the value is. This is just a little lot that was right next to it, you know, that they say is valued at 81, but even back in 1989 for this 1 acre lot, they paid 165,000 for it. So you'd have to really have somebody that kind of wants, you know, that type of property. But I thought it was kind of interesting, you know, interesting property to sell at a tax sale, and for the right type of buyer, you know, could have
Yeah, it'd be a cool place to build a house. It'd be
yeah.
a really cool place to build a house. You know, that's an incredible lot. And yeah, and a lot that is probably valued way higher than what they paid. The 77,000 that they picked it up for, or 72,000 they picked it up for. You know, they've got tons of equity in that if they wanted to develop that or just sell it as is. They've got their, you know, their option. And what's nice about that property too is it's all the features of the property that make it unique that you know, are going to lead people to want to buy it. You know, it's somebody would buy that based on its location.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so there was quite a few more. I probably had another 10 different properties, but we'll go ahead and throw it back. We've already spent a lot of time, but there is good opportunity in California. In fact, some of the other ones that we're going to show were kind of cheaper type land that were picked up for a couple of grand that are worth 10 to 20 grand. And so, you know, even though we looked at a little bit more expensive properties that people paid up for in circumstances, you know, most of these properties were picked up for, you know, under 40 cents on the dollar. And many of them are in areas where properties are selling, and picking it up at that price, you can still make a good profit on it.
Yeah. Your guys' comments crack me up. Matt thought it was a pot farm. It probably is a pot farm.
It probably was. I just didn't want to say that. I'll go ahead and throw it back to you, Shade.
All right, cool.